What's up, guys? It is your boy Simone Fan 101, and today we are going to be reviewing Avengers Infinity War. It's 8:13 at night, and I don't give a shit because I got to get this review done so that way I can have time for Ant-Man and the Wasp tomorrow, watch some behind the scenes of a couple other films, and have enough time, enough breathing room, so that way I can watch Avengers Endgame without feeling a bit too burnt out. Because I'm not exactly suffering burnout as I'm still enjoying it, but it's like it does get tiring because you're watching so many movies in a row. Anyway, so this is Avengers Infinity War. This is one of the biggest movies ever made. Ever. Just in terms of scope, scale, the cast, the writing, the directing, the story, the effects, everything. Everything about this movie screams big. Even the budget and the box office, as it turned out. This film had a budget of $316 to $400 million. If I had to guess anywhere, it's probably closer to the $400 million mark than the $300. This film had a box office of $2.048 billion worldwide. To put that in perspective, that puts it in some pretty elite company in terms of the money. Only 3 other films ever made the $2 billion mark. Star Wars The Force Awakens, which was not as good as a movie as this, but had the benefit of being the first Star Wars film featuring original trilogy characters since 1983, which was a 22-year time gap in between films, as, of course, you know, the prequels only had R2-D2 and 3PO, as well as, you know, Chewbacca and Yoda. But yeah, we're talking Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, Han Solo, all those characters. So you have all of that, and you have all of that, and it was just kind of a big deal. Titanic is one of the other 3 films, which, let's be honest, Titanic actually made closer to $1.8 billion originally. But at some point down the line, it was actually re-released and it made the $2 billion mark. So So in a way, it's only one of 3 films on the original theater run. You can only count Titanic when you factor in re-releases. And Avatar, also directed by James Cameron, was released back in 2009, made $2.7 billion. Although that film had the major benefit of A, having great special effects, especially for the time, and B, having being released in 3D, which that was when the 3D craze blew up, and there was a film that coincided with that, which was Avatar. Which is funny considering the fact that out of these 4 films, in my opinion, Avengers is the best one. I like Titanic, I like Force Awakens, Avatar was fine, not perfect, but this film was clearly the best of the 4, and yet it made the lowest of the $2 billion movies, which is sad, but sadly that's the story for a lot of great films. So many of them don't even make that much money. Just look at Alita Battle Angel. Anyway, then okay, so you got all those things. And you also have the plot. Let's get into the plot real quick. So, what's going on? Well, after the event, this takes place almost immediately after the post-credit scene of Thor Ragnarok. I assume Thor Ragnarok takes place over a longer period of time than we originally see in the movie. Either that, or the post-credit scene takes some time longer, being that they're without the Bifrost. They have to fly by ship to Earth, which probably takes a good amount of time. At the end of that film, they come across a giant ship that, of course, leads into the beginning of this film. And as it turns out, the ship contained the great baddie himself, Thanos, who had been built up for 6 years since the post-credit scene of the original Avengers film. He and his top, what he calls the Children of Thanos, Ebony Maw, Cull Obsidian, Proxima Midnight, who's the female, and Corvus Glaive. And of course, Ebony Maw is like the telepath. And, so yeah, and Obsidian is the big hulking guy. Corvus Glaive is the skinny dude with the spear, just to let you guys know the names. Thought I'd mention that. They attack, off-screen, of course, they attack Thor's ship. We don't see Korg, we don't see Valkyrie. I heard later on that they actually escaped in like one of the pods of the ship or something like that. At least that's what I heard. But mostly everyone else is dead. They killed off most of the Asgardians there, all except for Thor, Loki, and Heimdall. They're the only survivors of the attack, and Heimdall and Thor got the shit kicked out of them. So you have Thanos, who is after the Infinity Stones and already seemingly has the Power Stone, of which, if you remember, we last saw it in the hands of the Nova Corps on Xandar. Thanos is after the Space Stone, which of course which ends up being the Tesseract. And after a brief scuffle with the Hulk, beats him down, and using the dark magical power that was alluded to in the first Avengers movie, Heimdall sends Hulk to Earth to warn them about Thanos, and in retaliation, Thanos kills Heimdall. Then we have Thor, who again is beaten down, is once again only has one eye and has an eye patch, very similar to his father Odin, and Loki, who gives him the Tesseract in order to spare Thor's life. And after doing so, and right before they leave, Loki, at first says, "Oh, let me lead you to Earth and show you how it's done," even though he failed, but he did have experience in that arena, in his words. But it's actually all a trick and supposed to be a ploy in order for him to kill Thanos. And as it turns out, Thanos saw it coming and kills Loki in retaliation by literally crushing his throat and probably severing his spinal cord and stuff, basically killing him and choking and killing him to death. Now, unlike all the other Loki fake-outs that we've seen in the first two Thor films, we think, of course, obviously, Loki is really dead this time. And clearly, and even if he still lived, he probably most likely would not have survived the explosion that happened as Thanos activates the Power Stone to destroy the ship and the Space Stone in order for them to teleport out and to teleport basically wherever the hell they want to, probably back to their ship. Then you have, then we cut to Hulk, who is crash lands in the sanctum of New York City. The sanctum, of course, being being guarded by both Doctor Strange and Wong, from the Doctor Strange film. Of course, then we cut to the opening credit name, and then we see Iron Man talking with Pepper Potts. But then the little moment they have is interrupted by Doctor Strange, and he along with Wong explained to. Thanks to Bruce Banner, transforming back from the Hulk to Banner, and it tells him about Thanos and Wong reveals the information about the Infinity Stones, and despite some back and forth squabbling between Doctor Strange and Iron Man, they try to figure out what to do. Vision, who has turned off his transponder, and of course wields the Mind Stone. He's turned off his because he's turned off his transponder. The only way someone could find him is by somebody else. That being, in their opinion, Steve Rogers, who, of course, after the events of Captain America: Civil War, not exactly on the best of terms with Tony Stark. And right when he's about to call, thanks to the behest of Bruce, telling him that Thor is most likely dead. They're about to call, but then one of the ships from Thanos' big main ship arrives along, and with them comes Ebony Maw and Cole Obsidian, the hulking brute guy with the giant, not a scepter, but like a scythe-like weapon. They attack. They fight Iron Man, Doctor Strange, and Wong. Bruce Banner, for whatever reason, cannot turn back into the Hulk. And in my personal opinion, I think the reason why Hulk refuses to come out to fight is because he got his ass kicked so hard by Thanos that he's almost being like a little bitch and hiding because he doesn't want to get his ass kicked again. And look, Hulk, he may have gotten some damage before in previous films, even in Thor Ragnarok, but he's never been as humiliated as he was by Thanos, and that's why he refused to come out. That's my theory, at least. Maybe they'll explain it in Avengers Endgame this weekend, or this coming weekend, but that's just my opinion. So they fight, they fight. Because they're fighting in New York, that of course gains the attention of Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, who comes to help out. Ebony Maw is able to capture Doctor Strange into his ship, while both Spider-Man and Iron Man pursue them. Wong stays behind to guard the Sanctum now that the Time Stone has been taken, and Banner finds the flip phone in the rubble to contact Steve Rogers. Then we cut, or at least one of the cuts we make, is to Edinburgh, where we see a little bit of time spending between the two with Scarlet Witch and Vision, who have since officially become an item. Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive go to retrieve the Mind Stone, and almost succeed after ambushing Vision and basically incapacitating him, preventing him from using the full might of his powers that we've seen in both Age of Ultron and Captain America Civil War. Hang on a second. I didn't bring a full water bottle with me this time, so you're going to have to stick with me if I keep coughing. So like I said, they get ambushed, but thanks to the phone call by Bruce Banner, they are rescued by Captain America, Black Widow, and Falcon, who of course are Natasha Romanoff and Sam Wilson. And they eventually take them to back to the Avengers facility, because where the fuck else do they have to go? They need help from someone, which of course both Bruce Banner and James Rhodes, aka War Machine, are waiting for them. Vision eventually offers to sacrifice himself by destroying the Mind Stone, and by destroying the Mind Stone, destroying Vision. But of course, the only person who has the power to do that is the one person he loves, that being Scarlet Witch, who at first refuses to do it. So, in order to find a different way, in order to actually get the Time Stone out of Vision's head, they go to Wakanda, where of course is the most it's the most how can I say it? It's the most technologically advanced place on Earth. So they go there in order to get the Time Stone out of him. At least that's the plan, without destroying Vision. Meanwhile, now of course this happened earlier in the film, but I'm just skipping around back and forth. Meanwhile, we cut to the Guardians of the Galaxy, who received a distress call from the Asgardian ship that was destroyed in the first scene of the film. Now, if you remember, the very first time we hear dialogue is a man calling for a distress signal, and who's calling for help. And by the way, that man that was calling for the distress signal, I gotta turn off this fan. I don't know. Yeah, so sometimes the fan, causes too much air and affects the throat. Anyway, they received a distress signal from a man at the very beginning of the film, and just a quick little trivia: the man who was calling for the distress signal was actually Thor director Kenneth Branagh, and I'm like, okay, that was kind of cool that we got a Kenneth Branagh voice cameo here. That was kind of cool. And by going to the destroyed Asgardian ship and seeing all the dead Asgardians, they're actually able to rescue Thor, who probably is barely alive at this point, but is healed up a little bit by the crew. And when they wake him up, and again through some squabbling, being that Thor and Star-Lord are very different from each other, it's revealed that Thanos had very recently stolen the Power Stone from Xandar by completely wiping the floor with it and stealing the Power Stone, and of course we see him steal the Space Stone. What is wrong with me right now? My throat is so fucking destroyed. Anyway, so it's revealed that Thanos plans on going after the Reality Stone next, at least by himself, which of course is in the hands of the Collector. Why does he have the Reality Stone? Well, after the events of Thor: The Dark World, in the post-credits scene, we saw both Volstagg and Sif give the Reality Stone to the Collector. And FYI, just in case anybody was wondering why Sif was not in the event of Thor Ragnarok at all, that's because in storyline, it's because she was banished by Odin. Of course, not knowing that it was actually Loki still in disguise as Odin for, quote-unquote, disobeying the crown. Okay, that's the storyline reason. What's the real reason? Well, the real reason was that Jamie Alexander, who played Sif in the first 2 Thor films, she had a scheduling conflict and couldn't make the film. So they had to kind of rework the film around the fact that Sif would not be a part of it. So, just FYI. Why wasn't she in this film? Well, look at the cast that was already in it. They could not fit her in the cast at all. Which is sad, because I really do like Sif, and I really wish that character would have gotten some kind of send-off, or, better yet, go be with Thor, but that's beside the point. Just want to get that out of the way right now. Anyway, so, Thor, again, the Collector has the Reality Stone on Nowhere. So after a little bit of more arguing, they come up with a plan that Rocket, Groot, and Thor will go to Nidavellir, so that way Thor can create a new weapon to kill Thanos, while Gamora, Star-Lord, Drax, and Mantis go to Nowhere to retrieve the Reality Stone before Thanos gets there. So they go to Nowhere, at first thinking that Thanos is trying to find the Reality Stone, but after a confrontation is revealed that A, he already has the Reality Stone, and B, Nowhere has been completely destroyed. He kidnaps Gamora after wiping the floor with Drax and Mantis using the Reality Stone, and even though Star-Lord promised to kill her for a secret that only she knows, he tries, but Thanos uses the Reality Stone in order to prevent that from happening, and then he escapes with the Space Stone. We then cutting back to later to Thor, and Thor, Rocket, and Groot. They find Nidavellir, which the star has gone out, and according to Thor, Nidavellir hasn't, the star's out, and Nidavellir hasn't been out like that in centuries. And apparently they come across Eitri the Dwarf, who of course was played in this film by Peter Dinklage, the great Peter Dinklage, who, he's not a small dwarf like Gimli or Thorin Oakenshield from Lord of the Rings and Hobbit. No, he's a tall-ass dwarf, like a huge-ass dwarf, like one of those things, almost troll-sized, compared to the rest of them. So the way they did that was actually very clever, actually. And he still moves around like Peter Dinklage. It's not like they CG'd him to make him move around like someone else. He moves like Peter Dinklage would move. Anyway, so Eitri reveals that while 300 dwarves lived on the ring, Thanos invaded and forced him to make a weapon, the Gauntlet, of course, that can harness the power of the stones. And he did it thinking he would spare all the dwarves, even though Thanos just killed all the dwarves anyway, because that's just how Thanos works. So that happens, and they decided to make Stormbreaker, which is the King's weapon, and supposedly not only is it the greatest weapon ever created for an Asgardian, but is also possibly has the power to use the Bifrost, which is pretty cool, if I might add. Now with I was going to say Thor. That comes closer to the end, or the final climax of the film. We cut back to, I cut back here back to Iron Man, Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange. Iron Man and Spider-Man are able to defeat Ebony Maw by outsmarting him and sending him into space. And instead of going back to Earth, they decide to go to Titan, which used to be the home planet of Thanos, and where the ship was heading to in the first place. And they go there, and they come across the Guardians of the Galaxy. How do they come across the Guardians of the Galaxy? Well, earlier in the film, Gamora is on Thanos' ship, and it's revealed that she knows the location of the Soul Stone. and she gives the location because, well, Thanos has Nebula, who tried and very nearly succeeded to kill Thanos. And Nebula tortures Nebula to the point where Gamora is forced to tell them exactly who, or should I say who, where the Soul Stone is, which is on a planet called Vormir. Which, you know, fun fact, when I first heard that, I'm like, did she just say Boromir, like from Lord of the Rings? I'm like, that would be weird going inside Sean Bean's head, but no, it's Vormir, Vormir, a planet that seemingly is locked in a lunar eclipse forever. And it's revealed that the actual protector of the stone is actually Red Skull. No longer not played by Hugo Weaving, but a very, very good impersonator. But yeah, Red Skull, as it turns out, did not die at the end of Captain America the First Avenger after he touched the Tesseract. Instead, he was actually sent by the Tesseract and was teleported to Vormir to guard the Soul Stone and be kind of its guardian and protector. And he's been cursed with having to guard the stone ever since, especially since he can't get it. And apparently the way to do it is the Soul Stone. In order to understand its power, in order to retrieve it, you have to kill the person in which you love most. And of course, being that he brought her there, for Thanos, that meant killing Gamora, the only person that Thanos truly loved and cared for. So he kills Gamora by throwing her off a cliff and acquires the Soul Stone. Cutting back to Captain America and the crew, they arrive in Wakanda and prepare for the invasion by the rest of the children of Thanos: Obsidian, Midnight, and Glaive. Glaive, who was actually injured in their last confrontation with Captain America, and apparently, so they go there. Bruce Banner, Hulk refuses to come out, so he fights in the Hulkbuster. They fight alongside the rest of the tribes that I talked about in Black Panther, like the Border Tribe. They fight alongside M'Baku. You had Okoye, Shuri, who is, thank Jesus, Shuri, who is far more likable this time around because they actually treat her character with a little bit of respect, and she treats the other characters with some respect. Still a little bit of spunk there, but not disrespectful kind of spunk. More like, I'm smart, but you guys tried your best kind of spunk. Very respectful. Something that she wasn't all that much in Black Panther. So glad the Russo brothers wrote her better there. So they prepare for the invasion, but through all the battles, Scarlet Witch, who is defending Vision, has to fight when the battle gets too rough. Thor, who by this time, through some damage, finally gets the Stormbreaker weapon after the star went out, and he had to use his body as like a way of opening opening and creating the weapon. Basically, he had to face the oncoming sunlight or oncoming heat of a star, and it nearly killed him until Stormbreaker, thanks to Groot, was finally formed. Thor came to Earth along with Groot and Rocket, helping out Captain America, who they were slowly being overpowered before Scarlet Witch got involved, and that was awesome. Scarlet Witch eventually does get involved in the fight, and the ensuing fight on Wakanda, despite being very, harsh and to the point where Vision had to get involved in order to kill Glaive. Glaive dies. Bruce Banner, thanks to the Hulkbuster, kills Cole Obsidian, and the combined efforts of Okoye, Black Widow, and Scarlet Witch, they kill Proxima Midnight. So there's all that, and the battle seemingly won. Cutting back, now of course it cuts back and forth between this battle and what's going on Titan, which Thanos arrives in order to retrieve the Time Stone from Doctor Strange. He gets into a fight with Doctor Strange and pretty much everyone there. Doctor Strange, Star-Lord, Iron Man, Spider-Man, Mantis, Drax, and eventually Nebula, who of course told the Guardians earlier to meet her on Titan, because of course that's where she knew Thanos would be headed. And she of course questions him, where's Gamora? And while they seemingly have Thanos in their grasps, Nebula, should I say, Star-Lord questions Thanos about what happened to Gamora, and Nebula figures out that because Gamora's not there, she assumes that Gamora is dead, in which Thanos confirms it. Obviously, Star-Lord ain't happy about this, tries to beat up Thanos, but this actually fucks up their plan, and right when they are about to get the gauntlet off, Thanos retrieves the gauntlet again, and is able to fight off everyone, including beating down Doctor Strange and almost killing Iron Man. As well as throwing a giant moon at the planet. That, by the way, was very awesome. So you had that. So after that, and after Doctor Strange gives Tony Stark gives Thanos a time stone in exchange for Tony's life. Says, we're in the end game now, obviously alluding to Avengers Endgame this coming weekend. Thanos, after retrieving the time stone, goes to Earth on the almost nearly won Battle of Wakanda, and retrieves or tries to retrieve, I should say, the Mind Stone. The rest of the good guys, who by this time are tired out, they're tired out, so they're beaten down. And Wanda Maximoff has no choice but to destroy the Mind Stone, which she actually does. But Thanos uses the Time Stone in order to turn back time, so that way not only does Vision live, but the Mind Stone is restored. He takes the Mind Stone from Vision, also killing him. So in the span of 2 minutes, we got the same character dying twice. And right when he puts on the Mind Stone, is about to do the snap to wipe out half the universe, which is his ultimate plan. Thor attacks, seemingly has him right in his grasp and almost kills him, but is not able to kill him, and kind of revels in vengeance, allowing Thanos to snap his fingers and wiping out half the universe along with it. The people that die in these films is revealed to be Bucky Barnes, Black Panther, T'Challa, Groot, Sam Wilson, the Falcon, various members of the Jabari tribes, as well as the various Wakandan fighters. Like the Border Tribe members, the Okie's warrior guards. I forget the Kor Jalagi people. I forget what they're called. So they die. Wanda Maximoff dies. Then we cut back to Titan, where Mantis, Drax, Quill, Strange, and even Peter Parker die all in that order and they die by being turned to ash. The only people who survived on Titan were Iron Man and Nebula, while those survivors on Earth were Captain America, Thor, or at least in this scene that we notice, Captain America, Thor, Rocket, who those three in particular, Bruce Banner, Thor, and Rocket almost immediately figure out exactly what happened, because they knew exactly what Thanos' plan was from the beginning. Then of course you got War Machine, Black Widow, Captain America, and as well as M'Baku and Okoye being the only survivors, the only named character survivors left after the snap, and they immediately realize what happened. Then the last scene of the film before the credits, Thanos watches the sunrise on another planet, and finally resting, which of course he said that that's exactly what he said he would do to Doctor Strange when he found all the Infinity Stones and did his work. Last scene of the film period was in the post credits when when of course we see Nick Fury, played again by Samuel Jackson, and Maria Hill, played by Colby Smulders. This is right when the snap's happening. They react to it. Shit starts going wrong. Maria Hill turns into dust, and Samuel Jackson goes to get some kind of emergency signal from what looks like an old version or a modified version of a pager. He turns into dust too, but not before sending out the emergency, which of course alludes to Captain Marvel, which of course was the worst of all the MCU films in my opinion, and the whole Brie Larson shit that we still can't get over because Brie Larson is fucking unlikable as shit. As well as the whole thing she's created, the whole controversy. So, this movie is fucking fantastic. I know it's already 30 minutes long, but I gotta say, this movie is fucking fantastic, and the praising will last shorter than the actual review for Black Panther, and hopefully Thor: The Dark World and Captain Marvel along with it. Everyone's great, and I even got the list right here. Robert Downey Jr., Chris Hemsworth, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, Benedict Cumberbatch, Don Cheadle, Tom Holland, Chadwick Boseman, Paul Bettany, Elizabeth Olsen, Anthony Mackie, Sebastian Stan, Tom Hiddleston. Even in the scenes where they're only in one scene, they do great. Like Idris Elba, Peter Dinklage, Benedict Wong as Wong, Pom Clemente as Mantis, Karen Gillan as Nebula, Batista, Zoe Saldana, Bradley Cooper, Gwyneth Paltrow, Chris Pratt, and of course we can't. We also got Denai Guerrero as Okoye, Letitia Wright, who's much better this time around as Shuri, though that's more on the writing. We got William Hurt in one scene as Secretary Ross, Samuel Jackson and Colby Smulders, of course, and their cameo appearances as Nick Fury and Maria Hill. We even got Jason Bateson in this film, in one scene and one line at that, as Peter Parker's friend Ned from Spider-Man: Homecoming. We have all of that. We of course have the children of Thanos. We have Red Skull back in the one scene, played this time by Ross Marquand, who does a great job, giving us the German accent that Hugo Weaving had in the first Captain America film. And they mostly did CG instead of all the practical makeup, which was still great in that movie. But of course, let's face it, every single actor in this movie was great. But let's face it, the standout performance in this entire movie was Josh Brolin as Thanos. Josh Brolin, in many ways, is the main, as Thanos he's the main character of the movie. This movie would not work. Obviously, it wouldn't work without a villain, but I'm being serious. It would not work unless you had a character like Thanos. And it's like, okay, yeah, there's a lot of action in this film. It's got the best action out of all the movies. But here's the thing, it's not just like a big action spot fest. If I wanted a big action spot fest, I'd go look at the Michael Bay Transformers films. No, this movie, it's got plenty of action in the beginning, almost entirely all action. I say almost. So much action in the third act. But believe it or not, a lot of the middle of the film, there's a lot of talking. There's a little bit of action here and there, like the brief scuffle between the remaining Guardians of the Galaxy members and Iron Man, Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange. You do get the brief scuffles here and there, but for the most part, there's a lot of talking, but it's talking with a sense of dread and a sense of seriousness that they have to do something. So this film is fucking amazing. What can I say? The acting is all great. Thanos is absolutely amazing. The relationship between him and Gamora is, in many ways, is the heart of this film. Because it's like, okay, so you have great action, but what's great action without good storytelling? Or that's where the connection between Thanos and Gamora comes in, where you really get the heart of the film, and where you get so much emotional depth with the characters, especially your main villain. And speaking of the main villain, I do like Thanos' plan a lot. I like how, even though it's not the right thing, and he considers it mercy to wipe out half the universe instead of, killing them one by one, wiping out half the universe in a single snap, I do like his intentions. His intentions are actually pretty pure, because he knows from experience, considering what happened to his own people on Titan, that, the resources in the universe is finite. Its people are finite. And a sacrifice has to be made. And it's revealed later that the people, when he took Gamora in under his wing, he killed half of Gamora's people. And even though she says he doesn't know that killing half the universe will allow people to prosper, as it turns out, as he reveals, killing half of Gamora's people, of her race, allowed that planet to prosper. So that, and it's like, wow, look, as dark and as dangerous as it is, it works. Clearly, as horrifying as it is, and morally you wouldn't do it, it is a strategy that does kind of work, and you can see where someone could believe in this. And Thanos, of course, believes that he is the only person with the sight and the will in order to get it done. Something that he believes Gamora once had. Anyway, so yeah, you had that. You had the relationships between the characters, the interactions off of characters like Iron Man, Doctor Strange, and the Guardians, and Bruce Banner meeting the Wakandans for the first time. Obviously, he didn't know anything about Wakanda, because he wasn't there for the events of Civil War or Black Panther. Various characters, a lot of them coming together, some of them separated, seeing Wong and other characters, work off each other, like Wong saying Hulk-a-burning fudge, which is just funny. Apparently they named a Ben & Jerry's ice cream thing after the Hulk, which is just hilarious. They did the same thing to Iron Man, or Tony Stark in this case. I mean, called it Stark Raising Hazelnuts. Whenever it's funny, it's extremely, extremely hilarious. Whenever they do get funny. The action is absolutely amazing. The effects for this film. Now, I made mention that as far as solo films go, visually speaking, Doctor Strange stands out the most because of just what they do with the effects. But in terms of the environment, in terms of how beautiful the effects look, in terms of every single little effect detail, this movie is by far the best in terms of the scope of things. Everything here looks realistic. Everything here looks great, it looks beautiful, it looks wonderful. The landscape of Titan, the look of some of of Wakanda, they even get down right. The look of other places like the Destroyed Nowhere, the explosion of the Asgardian ship, so many things, Vormir, so many things look so good. Nidavellir, when the star is shining, and the star's on, that looks really good too. So many things look good in this film. There's so many things. The effects, the action, the set pieces, the choreography, the cinematography, the interaction with the characters, the interaction probably behind the scenes, I bet had a good part. And so yeah. So okay. I mentioned so many positives. Are there any negatives? There are, but they're in the lines of the dialogue, and honestly, they're nitpicks. They're like super nitpicks. There's only 2 lines. One, Vision says, right before Wanda destroys Vision, he tells her that if he gets the stone, half of the universe dies. And I'm thinking, how exactly does he know that? I mean, it's very possible that Bruce Banner could have told him that, considering, his experiences as the Hulk. But, it's a little bit vague. But that could be ignored for the sake of the story and the emotion of the plot, especially with what happened to Vision twice. And the other thing is Thor. There's a line in here where he says he's over 1,500 years old. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. because if you remember, during the events of the first Thor film, the flashback took place in 1942 AD. And of course, this takes place in modern day, which is about 1,100 plus years later. A little less than 1,100 years later. So he should be younger than 1,500 years old. Unless he was a baby for several hundred years, which could explain things, but I mean, that's kind of vague. And it's like, I'm surprised they got that little detail wrong considering the timeline of the Thor films. But look, like I said, these things, these things are tiny, tiny nitpicks. That they're one-line things that are a little bit weird, but I'm like, okay, they're tiny nitpicks, but they can be super, super overlooked. And honestly, it's almost better if you overlook them. So, and I'm going to give this film a 10 out of 10. And in my opinion, for the longest time, Captain America Winter Soldier was my favorite of the MCU films. I got to change my mind. This is my favorite MCU film. And this is because the storytelling is great. Everything about this movie is absolutely fantastic. A couple of lines here and there aside. And I think one of the biggest reasons why I think it's my favorite, probably the biggest, has to do with how they handled the cast. The MCU did something very smart by building up these characters over the past 18 films leading up to the 19th film, that being, of course, Infinity War. So people are complaining, oh, we didn't give enough time with these characters and too little character development. I'm like, you had, 18 other films building up these characters? What more do you want? This film is not about building up the character of Captain America or Iron Man. This is an ensemble film with its main character being the main villain, and deservedly so, getting the most amount of character development because, well, he's the main villain, he needs character development, and that's exactly what this film gave us. I counted at the end credits, there were 27 individual credits for each for these people: Robert Downey Jr., Hemsworth, Ruffalo, Evans, Johansson, Benedict Cumberbatch, Don Cheadle, Tom Holland, Chadwick Boseman, Paul Bettany, Elizabeth Olsen, Anthony Mackie, Sebastian Stan, Denai Guerrero, Letitia Wright, Dave Bautista, Zoe Saldana, Josh Brolin, Chris Pratt. And I might be missing a name. That was from the credits in the film, but 27 individual credits for each of these actors. And that's not even including, appearances from Nick Fury, Colby Smulders, Benicio del Toro, William Hurt, William Hurt. Oh yeah, of course, Palm Clemente, Karen Gillan. Like I said, 27 different people in the credits. 27 different people. And like I said, that's not including William Hurt, who had to get his credits lumped in with someone else, and Winston Duke, who of course played M'Baku in this film. Of course, reprising his role from Black Panther. So you had all of that going for it, and they're able to balance it out so well because, again, you know these characters and you like seeing them interact off of one another. For that said, this is not only a 10 out of 10, and I'm watching this movie a year later, and unlike, say, Star Wars The Last Jedi, it's just as enjoyable back now as it was back when I first saw it. Strong as hell, 10 out of 10, and you're not going to be able to change my mind on that. So, until next time, guys, be well, stay safe, have a good day. I'll see you next time, guys, when I give you my last review of the MCU before Avengers and Endgame, and then eventually Spider-Man Far From Home in July. And after that, I will rank all the films from worst to best. Until next time, guys, be well, stay safe, have a good day. Like, comment, subscribe down below. And until next time, peace.